Good morning, everyone. It's Matt Rogers here. Look, we're just going to wait a couple more minutes. We've just got a few attendees still joining. So if you just give us another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Look, good morning, everyone. Hi, it's Matthew Rogers here from SignUp Software. Some of you, I believe, I will know. Obviously, you're existing customers of Xflow. So again, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I know everyone is busy, so I appreciate you attending this webinar so that you can learn more about what e-invoicing is. So we have a couple of guest speakers today, but I just quickly will walk you through the agenda. Also, if you have any questions and so forth today, please use the Q&A chat. We'll do our best to respond throughout the session, but if we can't, we will respond afterwards, and we can come back to you with emails, etc. as well if we don't get the opportunity to respond to all of your questions today. Sorry, we're just having a few issues just moving through the slides. I apologise. Okay, so look, in regards to the agenda today, we're certainly going to be covering off what is e-invoicing. I think that's important for the audience today, because certainly, my own experience within the market is there is, I guess, some confusion around what is e-invoicing. So certainly we'll be covering that off, how it differs from PDF and I guess OCR scanning. So I guess why Xflow and SignUp are very interested in this, the whole e-invoicing initiative, is that it will be potentially the next thing that will replace OCR over the next 5 to 10 years. So we certainly want to be ahead of that curve. Obviously, the benefits of e-invoicing we'll touch on today, the e-invoicing regulations across, I guess, ANZ, and an introduction to the international e-invoicing standards adopted by government bodies around the world is what we're going to be covering off today. We have two guest speakers today. We have Jarrod Wellings from the Australian Taxation Office. He is the Assistant Director in eInvoicing Solutions and Accreditations. He's responsible for the end-to-end management of relationships and processes relating to providers of e-invoicing solutions. So, a great speaker to help us understand what e-invoicing is and what it means within the the government environment or regulatory environments within Australia. Then we'll pass on to Dion Serini, who is the Senior Account Exec at Pagero. Pagero is a partner of SignUp, and they are one of the global leaders in sort of driving, I guess, the technology associated with e-invoicing. So from here, I'm going to hand over to Jarrod. I hope you enjoy the presentation, you get a lot out of it. And again, please ask any questions within the Q&A within the Teams environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. So I'm excited to speak to you today about e-invoicing, give you an overview of what e-invoicing is, what e-invoicing is not, some of the drivers behind the push towards e-invoicing, and give you a bit of a market update on where we are at in Australia, So as Matt said, I'm responsible for the accreditation or management of the service providers who operate in the network. But we'll go ahead now and look at what eInvoicing is. So as you can see on the top slide there, that's what a lot of businesses today believe eInvoicing processes are. So in 2021, we did a market research, and around 80% of businesses use this top-level process where they're sending emails and by PDF, and the buyer is receiving them into the system and either using OCR or manually entering the data into their system. eInvoicing, or the new way of eInvoicing, does not involve email PDFs. It involves the creation of invoice data directly from a supplier's software system, sent through a secure network, so it's received directly into the buyer's system. So it's a common data standard for the exchange of invoice data between suppliers and buyers, agnostic of the software that they use, as long as that software connects to the network. So we'll now go into a little bit of how that all works. So eInvoicing is powered by Peppol, or the Peppol network. So Peppol's been in place for over 10 years. It's a global interoperability network in place in over 40 countries. So it's not something new, and it relies on what's called the four-corner model. Now that four-corner model also isn't a new model. It's something that's used in SuperStream in Australia today. And what that model allows is for the invoice data to be exchanged between suppliers and buyers system, much like a telecommunications network. So we all have different telecommunications provider, but we're able to connect to each other because of the interoperability between the networks. So in this four-corner model, you've got corner 2 and 3, which provide that interoperability, and they're the access points that connect the supplier's software to the buyer's software. The supplier's data, to the buyer's software. In the middle there, you've got an address capability lookup service. So in eInvoicing, the ABN, and in New Zealand, the NZBN are used as the identifiers. So think of it as a digital phone book where it's looking up to see who's registered onto the network, and if they're registered on the network, a supplier can send invoice data to them. But you can also send other documents as well, like purchase orders and dispatch advice as well. So Peppol is made up of a couple of aspects. It's got the e-delivery network, so the specifications that those access points use to communicate to each other. The documentation, so the invoice specification, the purchase order specification. So it sets a common data standard between the providers in the network. And it's also made up of a legal governance framework, which sets the requirements for the providers to meet to connect into that network. And there's aspects to that around security, so meeting international security standards so that they can connect to the network. This network is an open network. So unlike other networks, as long as the supplier's software can connect to that network and the buyer is registered, they can exchange invoices and other documents through that network. So we'll now go on to the role of the ATO here and why we're talking to you about eInvoicing. So I might take a step back here because before we even got to the ATO, there was an independent report completed back in 2015. And that independent report was given to government. It basically found that there was inefficient business processes in place, which through adopting a global standard like eInvoicing, there could be $28 billion worth of cost savings to the Australian economy as a whole. So the government backed this initiative to move to a new framework of eInvoicing. So the first thing is it's not an ATO-led initiative, it was a government-led initiative. As part of that process, the government needed to elect a Peppol authority or a responsible party for managing a framework of providers in the Australian market. And as a result of that, because of initiatives like Single Touch Payroll and SuperStream, the ATO was selected as the Peppol authority. So we govern the framework of those providers. We make sure they adhere to the security requirements, encrypting their data and meeting the security standards. There's other roles that we do play as well. So we also play a role to increase awareness and adoption of the standard. And we also make sure the standard is fit for purpose for the Australian landscape. So e-invoicing is a global framework with a strong background in Europe where they use VAT. We use GST in Australia. So making sure the standard is fit for purpose for the Australian market as well. So the key point there is it's efficiency driven by government, not compliance driven, and the ATO cannot view the invoice data. So if you take your mind back to the slide before where you've got the four corner model, the data sits in the supplier's software, sits in the buyer's software, and it's exchanged between that network. The ATO isn't involved at all there. All right, so we'll now go on to why e-invoicing. So a lot of this comes from that independent report completed all those years ago, and the findings from that report was that there was a number of inefficiencies through the current invoice processes. A lot of that was down to the manual processing effort of suppliers and buyers. And as a result of that manual processing effort, there was also the opportunity for incorrectly entered data or data being sent to the wrong person, which would delay the invoice processing. There was some costing figures as part of that report, so $30.87 and $27.67 were the estimated cost per invoice to process paper and PDF invoices manually, as opposed to an e-invoice, which is $9.18. There was other challenges as well. So in Australia, there's on average, Australian businesses are paid 11 days late, and at any given point in time are owed $26 billion due to unpaid invoices. So that has a domino and flow-on effect to their suppliers who they're trying to pay as well. And the final barrier here as well that was identified was the market imbalance. So often there was complex or bespoke systems put in place to exchange invoices with different trading partners. What e-invoicing does is it has that common data standard open network, so it breaks down that barrier. All right, so the benefits to business and whole of economy. So what we've got here is it saves time. So as I mentioned from that report, and if you go back to that first slide where the current state is the email PDF, and maybe you don't see it, but on the supplier side, the manual data entry involved in creating an invoice and sending it to someone, that's removed with e-invoicing because it's entered directly into the software system. The buyer system is able to directly receive it into their system, getting accurate line level data, so it can be routed and processed according to the business process of the buyer. So that's a key feature of e-invoicing, is that you do get that accurate line level data. As it's entered from a supplier system, it comes directly into the buyer system, the goods receiving and confirming. So it reduces the time there in manual entry and allows you to go through your business process more smoothly and streamlined. So as that independent report indicated, most of that cost savings is around the labour effort that may be included in the invoice processes that I spoke about and that a lot of businesses are going through today. So with e-invoicing, it reduces that manual effort of data entry, chasing up missing invoices or needing to check invoices to add data in there. It's an open network, so connect once, trade with money. So like I said, as long as the buyer is registered on the network and the supplier and buyer have access to software that connects them to the network, you can trade with anyone on the network. So that's part of solving that market imbalance and needing to meet different requirements to trade with different trading partners. It's reliable and secure. So it's underpinned by that legal governance framework, which sets security requirements. If we focus in on the current state process of e-invoicing, there's some figures out there from the ACCC around business email compromise and payment redirection scams. Well, through the legal governance framework of e-invoicing, there's strong encryption in place. Grade A encryption is required by those providers to connect to the network. So we don't have to be technical. Grade A in school is great. Same for security here. So it mitigates that risk of details being changed when they're sent from a supplier system and business email compromise occurring. As a platform, because you're able to get that accurate line level data, it facilitates faster payment. So there's less blockages or less need for manual processes to go in and look and find invoice data. Because you've got that accurate line level data, it goes to the correct participant within the business to process and pay. So as a technology platform, it's an enabler for faster payment. And it's better for the environment. So you can do away with printing PDF invoices, and a lot of that better for the environment aspect and carbon footprint really also comes from a reduction in manual processes of the staff there as well. So there's many drivers and benefits for e-invoicing today. So now where are we today in the Australian market? So, so first of all, I work in one part of our team. We do have other parts of our team who work across all levels of business and work across government to drive adoption and awareness of e-invoicing. So as it currently stands today, there's almost 34,000 businesses registered on the Peppol network. That's doubled in the last 12 months. So we're seeing good year-on-year growth there with businesses registering on the network. 80% of those are small businesses, but if you think about the small business process to become enabled, a number of them have access to that through their existing accounting software like Xero, MyOb or Reckon at no additional cost. So they represent the largest number of registrants by business size. But we are seeing large businesses adopting e-invoicing. So we've had the likes of Bunnings, Woolworths and BOC Gas come on board to adopt e-invoicing, and there's different drivers there, and they've had, we're going to hear a little bit more about their journey as well in the next slide, but not right now. And there's other businesses who are on that journey as well. So just last year, we consulted with the Australian energy retailers to try and get e-invoicing on their roadmap as a result of a policy driver called the Better Bills Guidelines, where they needed to simplify their billing processes. So we worked with that sector to try and get e-invoicing on the roadmap for them as well. So that's just an example of, I guess, some of the work we're doing in the large business space to have more large businesses on board. In the small business space, we do monthly webinars and we work with a number of industry associations and intermediaries to drive adoption and awareness there. In terms of industries on the network, so all industries are represented on the network out of those 34,000 businesses. Construction is the highest volume of users by industry, which when you consider the market demographics in Australia, construction is the highest number of registered businesses in Australia, so it makes sense. There's also professional, scientific and technical services, retail, accommodation and food services and manufacturing round out the top 5 there. In the business lens, so government has had a couple of rounds of consultation, or Treasury has conducted a couple of rounds of consultation on how to increase the adoption and awareness of e-invoicing. One of those included a staged rollout approach or mandatory rollout approach for businesses based on size. As it currently stands, that hasn't been enacted, but the government is a supporter of e-invoicing and there has been multiple consultations on this, but at this point in time, there is no B2B mandate. Across the government space, so there's over 100 federal government agencies enabled, and there was a mandate on non-Commonwealth corporate entities, material entities, to receive e-invoices as of July 1 last year. And for suppliers to those government agencies, once they receive an e-invoice and the goods have been receipted, there was 5-day payment terms as part of that. So it's called the supplier pay on time or pay interest policy. So for suppliers to government, who fit that criteria, they'll receive favourable payment terms. We also have the state and state agencies on board, so South Australia and New South Wales are leading the way there, with other state agencies coming on board and local councils becoming enabled as well. So what's next? So there's a couple of things that the broader team is working on to drive that adoption and awareness. So there is an industry focus on the construction and recruitment sectors. So construction, like I said, has the largest number of businesses registered in Australia. So we're looking to drive adoption and awareness through that industry. We're working with the recruitment sector as well to drive adoption and awareness. Part of the driver there is over 50% of government procurement or tender processes come from that sector. So in the government space, we're working to onboard whole of government suppliers in that space. And just recently, we had the first eInvoicing hub in the Hunter Valley, which Federal Minister Jones actually put a media release out just to further demonstrate that the government is behind this initiative as well. All right, so now let's move on to some of those large businesses who have adopted and hear a little bit about their journey as well. All right, so BOC Gas, Woolworths and Bunnings are all early adopters. We do have videos of their full journey on ATO TV, but we can look at here. So BOC Gas, their driver was around making it easier to do businesses, for business to send the invoices, to process the invoices. And what they saw was an immediate reduction in payment times from their customers. So BOC Gas was sending their invoices as e-invoices out to their customers, and they saw a reduction in those payment times. They also did a customer satisfaction survey, and 80% of the customers rated it 4 out of 5 stars. So they had a pretty good experience with e-invoicing as an early adopter. Woolworths driver here around making doing business with Woolworths easier. So for them, they're able to recognise through this process, removing manual processes and removing those human error or delays in the process to make it more easy to deal with them, and by reducing that, it streamlined their processes. Finally, we have Bunnings. So again, Bunnings driver here was around making it easier for their commercial customers to do business with them. So their findings here is that the e-invoicing network is extremely stable. So e-invoices aren't going missing and they're being processed without issues. So here's a couple of examples of large businesses who have walked the talk, gone down that path today already, and have a positive experience with e-invoicing. So I might hand over to Dion now to talk a little bit more about e-invoicing and Pagero.
All right. Thank you very much, Jarrod. Appreciate you joining us today and sharing the ATO's perspective on all things e-invoicing. So thanks very much for that. And also thanks to Matt and the team at SignUp who have invited us along as a partner to kind of share the Pagero version of e-invoicing today. So, and I'm going to take you through that now. So first up, I wanted to give a bit of an introduction about Pagero and the role that we're playing around the world with e-invoicing, but much more than that. So we are, to be clear, we're an ATO accredited e-invoicing software vendor across Australia and New Zealand. And globally, we play a significant role as a part of the Peppol community, looking to continue to expand the e-invoicing journey of businesses, not just in this region, but around the globe. From a solution point of view at Pagero, we provide a tool, a network that helps buyers and sellers make the process of a transaction far simpler using technology that allows businesses to communicate to each other. So we refer to that as a smart business network. Our smart business network connects buyers and sellers with the opportunity to provide automated, compliant and secure exchange of orders, invoices, payment instructions and other business documents. These business documents can be tailored to the specific businesses we're working with. There's no real limit to the amount that we can continue to tailor and apply our solution depending on the needs. We do this regardless of size of business operation and also the location around the globe. We work with businesses quite extensively in many parts of the world. I think the key point I wanted to call out here is to say that at Pagero, we do many different document types and our network can accommodate so much. But the purpose of today is to focus in on around e-invoicing. And so for the priority of this session this morning, we'll really dive into e-invoicing and focus on that. And that is in the DNA of what Pagero offer across the market. Here is a bit of a global view of Pagero and our business. You can see that we, from a location perspective, those little arrows there are our offices around the globe. We've now got more than 30 offices that we have in different parts and different regions. We were founded in Sweden, in Gothenburg, and so you can see that there is quite a hot spot in Europe for Pagero and our offices. And that is true. There's plenty that's happened over the 15 years since our business was started with e-invoicing, but also e-document exchange across those parts. But right now we are seeing an expansion across other markets, and there is significant momentum with the focus on e-invoicing and in some respects compliance mandates that does see us continuing to grow at a rapid rate. I'm pleased to say at the moment we're operating with customers in more than 140 countries, which is great, and we have more than 14 million businesses that use our network all around the world. And you can see a few other call outs there about our R&D and the work that we're doing to continue to expand as we see markets continue to change and enhance what's been put in place over what is a significant period of time. So next, I want to dive a little bit into our network and the role that we play, and more specifically, how we may be able to help you. This is an analogy that we use quite commonly at Pagero to position how we see ourselves in that. If you focus on the right-hand side just for a second, you can see there a typical mobile phone. I'm sure all of us have one. It's either on the desk or in your pocket. But what we do each day is use our phones quite extensively to share, message, call peers, people, friends, family, and all of that we do across network. Some of us might be on Optus. For those in New Zealand, you might be using Spark. But actually, regardless of that, the opportunity for us to be able to connect with others is seamless, and you don't even know that you're using a different network. And that's how we like to see ourselves in terms of the role that we play at Pagero, and doing that for software, doing that for ERPs. And so from an open business network perspective, we actively integrate with all the large vendors that you would know quite commonly around the world that play in the ERP space. But it's also worth noting we go well beyond that. It could be an AP workflow in the case of Xflow, and many other tools that businesses use within their operations to continue to streamline the finance functions. So I suppose when thinking about that, you could see, and as Jarrod mentioned, the ABN and the NZBN could be a key way to do a comparison back to a mobile phone number. But we'd be doing that more from a commercial and a business perspective, using those numbers to identify businesses that we want to interact with and share invoices. This is the typical view of how businesses do continue to operate today across this region. Often they will be working with a large amount of both customers and suppliers, but there will be a lack of connectivity between those businesses, allowing them to share documents, sharing invoices, which creates a scenario where there is a significant amount of workflows and automation that's being created, taking a digital file or a digital format and converting it into analog, only to push it into an email to send it from an inbox to somebody else's inbox. And in other cases, it gets forwarded to another inbox. But that technology works for many businesses today and has been highly successful. But I guess what we're referring to here is creating that connectivity between businesses, between your suppliers and your customers, and allowing that interaction in a true digital workflow. And by doing that, allowing for further efficiency and some of the benefits that Jarrod spoke to earlier on when focused in on the ATO's role for e-invoicing and the benefits that we would have across Australia and New Zealand. And this is a little bit about how we see it at Pagero. This is a slightly different view, and this is using a smart business network to have the opportunity for businesses to interact using our network to share e-invoices in a truly digital sense. Often this process can be quite daunting of where to start and how do you start, and that is absolutely core to the work that we're doing each day. And I would always focus in these conversations around starting with a plan. And with e-invoicing, you can start small. We do, from a Pagero point of view, offer a data capture product. But often with customers that we're working with, that process is clearly defined and has been quite successful for a long period of time. So starting with e-invoicing only can be a really effective way of taking the first steps in the process of enabling e-invoicing, and then over time really starting to build a plan that allows that to open up. And often that plan requires a change in workflow, a commitment from the teams, but also significant amounts of work with the suppliers and customers that you're working with. And some of that absolutely, we at Pagero, we can help you with that. And ultimately creating a digital, global, smart and open approach using our network, and in some cases maintaining the existing workflows, but gaining significant benefits from the opportunity that e-invoicing creates. There's a little bit of detail here and I won't go through all of it, but these are the fundamental design pillars of the Pagero network and what our offer provides across the globe, and specifically here when we have the conversation about e-invoicing. The first of those boxes is covering off the open. And by open, we mean the opportunity to take a target file and within our network, we would change it into a universal format that allows us then to move the file to the source format, which is what the receiver would like to receive, and allows us to adapt regardless of the ERP software or format. Through our network, we can make that change and allow the businesses to have that share of information and do it in a really effective and automated way. The next is the smart. The smart is our network allows for businesses to be able to find their trading partners, to be able to connect and commence e-invoice trading. And we do this within our portal, allowing a variety of different ways for businesses to be able to go and search those that they're trading with and enable quite seamlessly. The next is the global, which is that third box that you can see. This is really our interoperability. This allows the connection of the Pagero network to many of the other needs that are out there. We've talked today about Peppol and of course the need to connect to an ERP. But there are many other use cases where Pagero can connect where required to other automation tools that allows for the processing of e-invoice. Finally, that fourth box you can see there is about compliance. And there are now more than 70 different compliance mandates around the world related to either e-invoicing or e-document exchange. And at Pagero, our network can connect to the needs of those specific markets and allow businesses trading in those markets to continue to be compliant. So now I'm going to touch a little bit on digitalization. And first, I thought it worth talking about what are the key drivers, what are the conversations that we continue to have with customers in market and our partners around this shift to e-invoice. And here are summing up the 4 key areas that we find often businesses are focused on and what are the drivers when moving. So first, compliance. This is obviously a less of a driver across ANZ, given, as Jarrod talked to, that there isn't a B2B mandate. But of course, there is mandates in other markets, and there are benefits that can be gained here locally from moving to e-invoicing, be it payment days, be it trading with government. These are all needs, and they are becoming more and more common. The next one to focus on is automation. Of course, using digital workflows and using e-invoices, there are significant benefits in automation. Often it's taking out the human interaction or a process flow, sending an email, verifying an invoice. These are workflows that can, through the implementation of e-invoicing, be reduced or removed entirely, and ultimately providing for real-time information and data for businesses to be able to use to assess their procurement, their spends, as opposed to the current processes which those business functions can take a little bit of time. The third is security, and of course this has been growing over the past few years. There has been lots in the media. It seems almost each month there's something significant being raised, either locally or around the world. And so using digital workflows does create far greater security. The removal of email and some of the fraudulent activity that goes on continues to grow and be a risk for everyone. Finally, the fourth driver that we talked to, which is all equally important to the others, is around sustainability. And so with the change to moving away from the likes of email and in some further analog processes around paper and post, sustainability is a core focus, and there are clear and obvious expectations from businesses going forward around what they need to achieve in their sustainability goals, and moving to e-invoicing certainly will tick those boxes in moving in the right direction. I wanted to also touch on here another driver that we see quite commonly, more certainly over the last month or so, is your existing customers, suppliers, or key trading partners who will want to be starting to have a conversation about the move to e-invoicing because it's a priority of theirs and it's in their own business plan. We are starting to see more of a network effect and a knock-on where businesses have made that transition to e-invoicing, like Woolies, Bunnings, and BOC Gases, as Jarrod points out. But the opportunity for businesses to start to talk with each other about their own plans and try to align on how that journey could look. I wanted to give a bit of an update too on the e-invoicing landscape. I would typically cover the ANZ approach, but of course Jarrod has very thoroughly covered AU. So I do want to dive into NZ because there is plenty happening over in New Zealand, probably maybe as much or more than what we're seeing across AU. So in terms of pure numbers, we're very close. In fact, it'll be days that will tick over 10,000 enabled businesses in New Zealand, which is great. Some key logos who have already made the transition are Fonterra, KPMG and Kiwi Bank, who are significant businesses in New Zealand, and we are starting to see that knock-on effect that I talked to before. Also, construction is a key priority in terms of a vertical within New Zealand, where we are seeing more momentum, maybe than some of the other traditional verticals for trading with government, doing work for government and or tenders. So that construction space continues to be a real hotspot. In terms of government, you can see there are 30 plus government agencies that are already enabled. But I think what's key is the targets that have been set by the MBIE around the goal of business to government invoices and what the plan is over the next 3 years. So the focus is to deliver 10% of volume in that space this month in 2023. So 10% of business to government invoices in 2023 to be an e-invoice. By 2024, they're looking for that to be 50%. And by 2025, looking for it to be 90%. So quite an ambitious goal by the MB, but certainly they are working really hard and setting up the foundations to put those objectives in place. The final piece around New Zealand to call out is the planned changes to the procurement rules, which will see anyone tendering or looking to do work for the government. There will be a need for the standard approach to be the utilisation of e-invoicing, which is also going to have a material impact on the businesses in New Zealand and the speed at which the adoption is going to flow for e-invoicing in that market. So lots and lots happening. You can see there we included a few of the logos who have already been enabled for e-invoicing at the bottom. A couple to call out would be Fujitsu and Westpac, which are some additional ones to the commentary that we've provided. So plenty happening. There's plenty of momentum as there is in AU. I just wanted to call out the headlines about e-invoicing and just sort of shout out the key aspects of the benefits that we see broadly. The first of those is the expected saving to the economy by the sheer efficiency and benefits created by the e-invoicing process, and that's claimed to be $32 billion, which is really quite significant. But the process flows are that different that those savings can be realised over a longer period of time. We talk to a 40 to 60% on average savings compared to email PDF processing. And the numbers you can find on both the ATO and the MB website specifically for those markets. But when you do see the comparison of the average cost to process a PDF invoice versus what it costs to process an e-invoice, it is significantly different. And that 40 to 60% saving is quite achievable. There is the ESG benefit, as I talked to before, and it's quoted at 5,000 tonnes of carbon avoided. And as we continue to go through challenges across the globe with bushfires, global warming, and the impacts to our environment, that will become a growing focus of all businesses. Most importantly, of this slide to businesses directly would be the days outstanding and the payment day reduction that is expected by a far more efficient workflow. And in some cases, the opportunity to claim a shorter payment window with a government agency based on an e-invoice. So we are saying around a week is what is typically expected to be the saving for providing an e-invoice and getting a payment paid far quicker. These are some of the logos that we're working with at Pagero, both globally and locally. So to touch on a couple of global ones, first up, we are working with Microsoft in multiple markets around the world to help support them with their drive specifically around AP. And recently we've working with Netflix also in Europe. That's continuing to be an expanding partnership for us to support Netflix with the process of e-invoicing, but a few other elements, and they're clearly two really big and important customers for us around the globe. Focus more locally, we are also, we at Pagero have helped Kiwi Bank with the move to e-invoicing, as we had Fujitsu, Glencore, Atherton and Babcock. And also calling out there, you can see Ministry of Education in New Zealand, who we're working with, all in a different respect. It's certainly not a copy paste for any of those. We tend to find the right opportunity and the need to help provide support, and then look to expand that as the needs for e-invoicing in particular as they grow. I thought I'd just deep dive a little bit with one of our customers globally that we work with, and that's HP. This is a deal that's quite a few quite a few years old for us now. We've been working with HB for quite a while, but this arrangement is now expanded out into 29 markets. The focus of this is AR, which is outbound invoicing. And the needs initially for HP was the focus, and the KPI around this engagement was about payment days. We've been successful in reducing the payment days for HP by 7 through the opportunity to send a digital invoice. And you see there's a few other parts of our product suite that we're working with HP as well. But most specifically, the key driver here is the e-invoicing, collapsing the processing time, and then gaining benefits where possible from any local opportunity to reduce that payment window. We'd expect over time that our partnership with HP will continue to expand. We are already in conversations about expanding that 29 markets out to more as we continue to find the right solution for them. I wanted to take a moment just to touch on our vendor onboarding programs that we do at Pagero. It is a point of difference for us in that we not only work with customers to enable e-invoicing, but we go further than that. We take the time to look at both customers and supplier opportunity dependent on the AR or the AP focus of the business that we're working with. And we look to try to support other businesses, other vendors, to also think and create their own plan around what e-invoicing could look like. The journey to e-invoicing can't be done just by one business in isolation, clearly, because it needs to be a network effect. So at Pagero, we have a team based in Melbourne who are experts at working with customers and suppliers to make that transition to e-invoicing as well. Oftentimes that could be a small business operator who is using Xero MYOB, and the e-invoicing functionality is literally the flick of a switch. But it also could be other enterprise style customers where there may be a need to consider a particular solution. And what's important is that solution doesn't need to be Pagero. That solution can be the right solution for that business. Of course, we would provide an opportunity to kind of share the solutions that Pagero offer, but there are some really cost-effective. We actually have some free solutions that allow businesses to get up and running with e-invoicing really quickly, and that helps generate that network effect that we've talked about today. Finally, I just wanted to share a little bit about the global landscape for e-invoicing. At Pagero, we do have the global view. In fact, we have a regulatory team in our headquarters in Sweden who monitor what's happening around the globe with compliance and mandates to help our customers continue to be compliant in the markets that they're trading in. This view shows you what it looks like today and the complexity that there is in terms of the varieties of different mandates across the world. And you can see that it's really messy. There's plenty of markets doing different things, and often it's about trying to make sense of that and trying to help support businesses to be compliant in those markets when trading across. We're very lucky to have had Peppol chosen as the format, and through the years to come, we'll benefit significantly for that. But if you're a business trading in any of these other markets, then at Pagero, we can most certainly help you understand those needs and ensure that you continue to be compliant regardless of which markets you want to continue to operate within. And that's it. That's a wrap. For me, we again really appreciate the opportunity to come along today and share a little bit about. We're always excited to talk e-invoicing actually, but to share a little bit about it from the Pagero perspective. I would encourage everybody to ask as many questions, think about those things that are necessary for you, and we're all here to help. And if post we can be any further support, we're all very happy to have those conversations to continue to help you, regardless of where you're at on your e-invoicing journey. And with that, I'm going to throw to Matt, who's going to jump in here. Look at this.
Look, hi again, everyone. Thank you for your time. And before I lose you and some of you drop off, I guess there obviously everyone on this webinar is a customer of ours. So how does all this fit in with Xflow and I guess D365? So the important point I want to make here is there has been some sort of questions in the background. Is there a demo around how all this works? Well, no, because it's not a very exciting demo because most of you are already running Xflow. What I can tell you is more than happy to discuss this one-on-one with you as well, but we already have the import method to be able to import invoices or an e-invoicing format from Peppol, from Pagero. So that already exists. So if you have a customer of yours or a supplier of yours, sorry, that's wanting to send you invoices via the e-invoicing format, we can accept those invoices already. We already have, as I said, the import method. So that would go straight into Xflow. Not dissimilar to anyone who might be using any EDI tools at the moment, and you might be bringing those invoices in through Xflow. Bearing in mind, e-invoicing is the invoice itself. It's the format. It's what you're currently potentially scanning via your data capture tool, but you still would require Xflow to be able to manage, I guess, the workflow approval process, your three-way matching principles that may exist within D365, if you're running contracts and agreements within Xflow, etc. So all of that would still exist and still needs to be there. This is just a different way as opposed to scanning your invoice and bringing it into Xflow/D365. So I hope that's sort of clears anything up there. And again, more than happy to have a one-on-one session to explain that, but we are ready to work with those Peppol formats already. Okay. So again, thank you for your time. If you do want to hang around, there is a couple of questions here, which I think one probably relates to maybe to Jarrod to be able to answer. And it's one of the questions that came through is, how can we get confidence that the supplier/customer is certified for e-invoicing? So Jarrod, I think that might fall into your domain. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So in terms of the certification, we certify the providers who deliver the services on the network. So the likes of Pagero, and we also set the requirements on Pagero and other providers to provide assurance around the suppliers or buyers on the network and that they're legitimate businesses. So as part of the requirements that we set, they need to validate that the business is a legitimate business. The supplier and buyers themselves don't become certified. They use a product or a provider to connect them to the network. So that's kind of how it works there. So the actual checks are done by the provider to make sure that it's a legitimate business, if that makes sense. And I hope that's addressed the question there.
Thanks, Jarrod.
I will just add one more thing to that as well, because this one does come up. So the 33,000 businesses that are registered on the network, it's only a requirement for a buyer to be registered on the network, and that information is publicly available through the Peppol directory. There's no visibility of suppliers who have access to the network. However, we know, like I said, you've got the accounting products, MyOb, Xero, Reckon, who all offer it as part of a standard subscription. The best way is to reach out to your suppliers there, or maybe they'll reach out to you around the invoicing. So just to add a bit more context there.
Thanks, Jarrod. There's probably another question here that that probably fits into more Dion's category. The question is, can you select which vendors to turn e-invoicing on for progressively, and is there a way to pilot? So I think Dion's probably the best one to.
Yeah, sure. I can cover that. So yeah, the answer is yes. There is a way to be quite selective in terms of the either suppliers or customers that you want to enable or create that connection with. That can be done, as Jarrod just identified. There is an open Peppol list that really allows anybody to go in and have a look to see who is enabled and who's not. The focus there, of course, is the buyer, as he just identified. But from a Pagero point of view, we have a fully integrated portal that allows that search function that I talked to before, where you can go either with an NZBN or an ABN, or you could search in any other aspects to be able to find other businesses that are enabled. and you can essentially tick a box for that enablement and confirm that you want to. Or if you don't, that's okay too. You can leave it be and have a separate conversation with them about why and how that will ultimately play out. So just because both businesses are enabled, it doesn't mean that that connection is automatic. It happens at the selection through a selection criteria of those businesses. Is there any other questions there?
No, look. Most of the other questions that I've seen that have come through is around, I guess, the integration, etc., with Xflow, D365, and Pagero. And I think I did sort of. Hopefully, I've addressed that for most people in terms of it's there. We have basically it's an import method. We've already built that, so we can work with Pagero and the Peppol network to be able to bring those invoices and other documents potentially into Xflow. Okay, so it is already there. Yeah, there's not much more to say about that. And once it goes into Xflow, it's automatically obviously within D365 as well. But yeah, that's probably, I guess, the majority of the questions that we have today. And conscious of time, we're about 4 minutes early, but unless there's nothing else, again, please feel free to reach out to us after this event. And we're more than happy to engage you one-on-one or to answer any other specific questions you may have. But thank you for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jarrod.
Thank you.